Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. We are on chapter 33 of The Brain Saver by Medical Medium. Now, this chapter is on eating disorders, and like I said in my last video, this is a really long chapter, and it's really dense. So we won't get through this entire chapter as it is pages and pages and pages long, but we will get through a pretty good portion. It's like 20 plus pages. So let's get into it. And this just might change your perspective on what an eating disorder even is. And if you are struggling with an eating disorder, this information can help significantly. All right, let's get started. We can all become consumed by what we're eating. You know what? Actually, before I start, let me get a pen. Why do I always forget this piece? Okay. We can all become consumed by what we're eating. Are we eating too much? Are we eating too little? Are we eating when we're not hungry? Do we eat so much we make ourselves sick? Are we into portion control? Are we micromanaging our eating on a daily basis? Do we convince ourselves that we're eating in moderation or eating imbalanced? Do we tell ourselves we don't need much food? Are we eating the wrong things? Do we punish ourselves for eating the wrong things? Do we eat the wrong things to reward ourselves? What constitutes as the wrong things? Who's right and who's wrong? Eating disorders are rampant. They can exist in every one of us. We're all consumed about food. If we weren't, it wouldn't make sense because we have to be concerned about food. It's how we live, work, play, function. If food doesn't enter our body, we will eventually cease to exist. That's always been a part of our history as humans. What makes it a food disorder in today's modern world is the amount of unhealthy conditioning all around us, combined with contaminants in our brains. And so what we have to do is learn how to eat in order not to have an eating disorder. All right, that was the introduction to eating disorders. Now we're going to get into the tab called eating in order. Have you heard of that one? We've heard of eating disorders, but have you heard of eating in order? Eating in order can have a few meanings. Eating in order to heal, in order to live, eating in order to survive, eating in order to thrive, eating in order to function, eating in order to succeed. A focus on food is not on its own unhealthy. Often when we're trying to take care of ourselves holistically and heal from symptoms and conditions, buying the right foods, consuming fruits and vegetables, eating less processed food, looking after ourselves in general, we can feel like we're trapped, alone, and worried about food in a bubble of our own world unless we find others like us. Even when we're doing it right, life becomes all about what to eat, how healthy it is, and where to find it. We can get lost wondering, does anyone else have to worry about this? Yes, every single person on the planet has to worry about food. It's natural. When you're trying to heal particular illnesses and diseases and conditions and symptoms, it's especially natural. You do have to be extra mindful about what you eat. If that mindfulness about food is done the wrong way, it can contribute to an eating disorder. If it's done the right way, it can correct an eating disorder and teach you how to eat properly. Okay, so let's just restate that statement right there. If it's done the right way, it can correct an eating disorder and teach you how to eat properly. But we need to figure out what is the right way, and are there multiple right ways? And is there a wrong way? Okay. Eating the right items at the right time can still feel as if you have an eating disorder because of how others view it. When you're trying to eat healthy, others often see it as too rigid. They may even label it as orthorexia, which I will read about later in this chapter. You can get blamed for too much fruit, not enough protein, too many carbs, it's endless, and I've personally heard it all. Yet what's interesting is when I was 60 pounds heavier, eating chips and queso every day for breakfast, eating Cheetos and Doritos and Munchies, and the chips are endless. I loved chips. And I loved eating out. I loved eating at restaurants. Nobody told me anything. Nobody told me maybe you should eat a little bit more fruit. Maybe you should eat some more whole foods. Maybe you should cut back on the tubs of queso. Nobody said a word. The moment I started losing weight, eating whole foods, eating fruits and vegetables primarily, people came out the woodworks telling me that I'm eating too much fruit, I'm losing too much weight. I was called orthorexic multiple times. Am I though? Because now I'm living symptom and condition free. Now I'm no longer so heavy. Now I have the energy to go outside and run and walk and exercise daily, which I couldn't before. It was difficult to even walk up the stairs without getting winded how big I was for my frame. It's interesting, right? Bringing your own food to holidays, not eating at events where the menu doesn't work for you, always packing snacks, orienting your life around the farmers markets, or making special requests at restaurants. None of this should be considered an eating disorder. When what you're doing is eating in order to truly heal. In order to truly heal. Oh, there's my neighbor. Oh, he's so damn sweet and cute. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to underline this. None of this should be considered an eating disorder when what you're truly doing is eating in order to truly heal. Now, don't we want to feel normal? To go out and eat a pizza or some fried food or cheesy pasta or a grass-fed burger or maybe some sushi? To go over to a friend's house and eat whatever they're serving and have ice cream afterwards? To eat whatever's on the table at a family holiday without worrying about how it's going to affect us with bloating, stomach cramps, gastritis, diarrhea, constipation, heartburn, acid reflux, indigestion, and acne? We all want to feel normal. The irony is that all the people who seem normal actually normalize dysfunctional eating and have eating disorders themselves. Now that's a big one. Let me underline that. They actually have eating disorders themselves. Let's talk about it. They don't eat correctly. No one has ever been taught about what our brain and body need, what foods our organs need, what foods to eat for our physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental health. We're left on our own demise. In order to heal, you have to get your foods figured out. You have to understand your food and get them in order. When your foods are in disorder, that's when you get an eating disorder. Everyone has been there wondering what to eat, and everyone is guessing. Many times, food contributes to not feeling well. Eating foods that are not appropriate for healing can contribute to developing a condition, illness, or disease. So what seemed to be normal, eating normal, acting normal, being normal with food, wasn't a good normal. It might have seemed like a good normal because you were with your family and friends. It might have seemed like a good normal because the food seemed tasty and satisfying. It might have seemed like a good normal because it was convenient. It might have seemed like a good normal because it offered comforting sensations that connected you with the past memories in life. Still, it wasn't good for other reasons. People who try to use food to heal, especially young people, will frequently be blamed for disordered eating. In the older days, it was even more common, particularly if it was a young adult trying to heal from chronic illness by eating fruits with vegetables. They could be taken to a clinic and force-fed, prompted by well-meaning family members who were actually the ones with the eating disorders, or who were very scared because the young person's diet was very different from what they believed was normal. We're in a better, safer place now with food that we were just 2 decades ago, or than we were just 2 decades ago. Bringing in more plant foods is more accepted, not fully accepted, just becoming more accepted. A lot of confusion around eating disorders and healthy eating remains, and rightfully so. There are many trends in the health field that aren't right for the body, and they can rain on the parade of better approaches in holistic health. Some health professionals become reckless, and it ends up looking bad for everyone in the natural health field. People venturing into certain cleanses, certain detox programs, and certain diets already have eating disorders. And when they do these reckless diets and cleanses, it worsens their eating disorders, creating more confusion, fear, and frustration. This could give healthy eating a bad name and even start a new eating disorder, because the makers of these diets and programs have no idea why anyone is sick to begin with. So the information they are giving others to use is not in order. And we see it out there all the time, you guys. These fads are insane. Do not fall in the trap of a fad. If someone is saying that you can lose 5 to 20 pounds in 1 to 2 weeks, do not believe them. Do not believe them. A, that's unhealthy. B, even if you can, why would that be your goal? Wouldn't you want to keep those pounds off? If you can lose 10 pounds in a week, you'll gain that back. So we teach you guys here at me and Tenzin have a business for energy. We help you guys not only with weight loss, but we help with all chronic illnesses and diseases, symptoms and conditions that you have been dealing with for life, for years, for decades, for however long. We help you with using medical medium tools. We help you heal, not just for a few weeks, not just for a month, for life. I'm drinking celery juice right now, which medical medium goes so much into detail about celery juice. He has an entire book on it. Okay. Let's read about eating in disorder. There are so many levels of eating disorders, so many different levels. Not eating all day, just getting by on coffee, and then eating at night, that's an eating disorder. Overeating at every meal, whether becoming uncomfortably full or eating until you can hardly breathe, that's an eating disorder. Trying to portion control at every meal without regard of your hunger, That's an eating disorder. Counting every single calorie and excluding healthy foods because of calorie count is an eating disorder. Enrolling in trendy dietary programs and following all the rules without regard to how they make you feel is an eating disorder. Injecting yourself with trendy hormones or taking pills with hormones in them while eating 500 calories a day is an eating disorder. Going on radical cleanses where you eat and drink virtually nothing for weeks or even a month is an eating disorder. There are less obvious forms too. Trying to peer pressure others into eating not so good foods because you don't want to feel bad about eating those foods, that's an eating disorder. Eating foods in front of loved ones that you know will tempt them and sabotage their healthy eating plans, that's an eating disorder. Consuming diet soda on a regular basis, that's an eating disorder. Thinking about food all the time is an eating disorder. Not thinking about food, pretending you don't need it. Consistently letting your blood sugar drop, not planning ahead about what you're going to eat is an eating disorder. Having a meltdown if your food doesn't come exactly the way you ordered it is an eating disorder. Eating everything that someone throws in front of you is an eating disorder. Eating only while you're driving is an eating disorder. Always having to sit at the table to eat is an eating disorder. Only eating while standing up is an eating disorder. Wolfing down food and clearing your plate in record time is an eating disorder. Painstakingly spacing out each bite without a medical reason is an eating disorder. Foods that set you off emotionally because of something that happened with these foods along the way in your life, that's an eating disorder. It's endless. Let's read about food conditioning. What causes these everyday eating disorders? Often conditioning. For example, when kids go to camp, boarding school, or a friend's house, many rules around food tend to be in place. With set meal times, when you're only allowed to eat what's being served and have no easy access to food outside of those windows. It's common to get into a habit of squirreling away treats and goodies like candy bars and potato chips, a habit that can continue later in life, even when the same limits are no longer in place. Then there's the example of someone being raised in a family where there's only so much food on the table at every meal. So if you don't fend for yourself and gobble down what you can, you're not going to get food. The faster you eat, the faster you may be able to get another serving. Those are just two examples. There are hundreds of more ways we can get conditioned around food. Even if your circumstances change, the fear and habits can stick around. With conditioning like this, your brain receives messages that you're not going to be able to eat when you want, find the food you really want, or find food at all. And then often those messages don't get resolved and refreshed as life changes. People end up in adulthood still living with that childhood feeling that they may not be able to get enough. It's like being burned by a hot stove. Once you learn that early lesson that you can get hurt by the hot surfaces, you're always conscious near one. If you went to bed hungry a lot in your youth, it was like getting burned. Your brain stored that information. So that going near a dinner table may have the same charge as approaching a stove. It may put you on alert and give you the same sense of weariness. And you can carry that through life. Unless, that is, you recognize it and recondition your brain. While the memory of that injury will always be there, you can still build a new database, a new foundation around eating, and that is huge. That is huge. Let's talk about tainted taste. Here's another contributor to everyday eating disorders. Taste. When two people eat the same food, they tend to think they're experiencing the exact same thing. They're not. When you're sitting next to someone eating the same mac and cheese, the same biscuit, and the same soup, even when you both like it, what you're each tasting is entirely different. Isn't this fascinating? Our taste buds and palate are conditioned. Wait, hold on. I'm underlining. Our taste buds and palate are controlled by our central nervous system. Fascinating. That is, our brain controls our experience of flavor. The tongue is just a tool. Often people think the mouth is controlling flavor. That's not entirely false. If you put a cough drop or stick of gum in your mouth, that would alter the flavor of whatever you ate next. Taste buds can become saturated with anything toxic, pungent, spicy, or acidic. And that can alter what you taste. Cigarettes, for example, can alter someone's sense of taste, and so can artificial flavors. That taste contamination coming through the mouth and even the nose. That type of flavor contamination, aside what controls our experience of taste and flavor, is the brain. Signals travel back and forth between the mouth and the brain via the hypoglossal and the glossopharyngeal nerves. I remember learning about these nerves in anatomy, which come out of the brain stem. It's those nerve messages in the brain that really determine someone's experience of, for example, bitterness. It's part of the reason why people have certain food preferences. The brain causes people to perceive the experience of consuming foods in certain ways. Any interference in the brain on any level, anything toxic inside the brain, can alter how we perceive flavors inside the mouth because the cranial nerves either become poisoned or neurons sending messages to these nerves become poisoned. So if the brain has any kind of solvents, MSG, toxic heavy metals, petrochemicals, pesticides, herbicides, or other toxic chemicals or viral neurotoxins stored up in its brain tissue, that can affect whether someone likes or dislikes certain food and drinks. For example, when someone has elevated levels of mercury or toxic heavy metals inside the brain or brain stem, cilantro, also called coriander, won't have a pleasing flavor. Instead, that person will dislike cilantro or even consider it repulsive. As they're minimizing the toxic heavy metals, the taste of cilantro changes and becomes tolerable or even pleasurable. He also mentions in another book that if you feel that cilantro tastes like soap and you've been told that it's a gene, it's not. It's heavy metals. It's not about flavor, which troublemakers have taken up residence in the brain and where can also determine whether people like or dislike specific consistencies of food. For example, you'll hear people say, I don't like the texture of avocado. I don't like anything mushy. I only like crunchy things. Or I like something I can sink my teeth into. That's because of what's going on in the brain. Often, the toxins in the brain plus conditioning from early life go hand in hand to shape our experience of food. Being told as a child that you have to eat something or have a bad experience at a friend's house with a certain food can lead to a lasting aversion. Sitting at your friend's dinner table, for instance, while their parents are demanding you clear their plate and eat all their meat before you can have dessert can lead to food pressure disorder. Add to that any kind of toxins inside the brain contaminating its messages to our tongue and nose, and you can see how everyone ends up with unique variations of taste and food. Did you ever wonder why one family member doesn't like the food that you love? Or why a friend can find the flavor of a dish so incredible that they can't get enough? Well, you try it and you say, it's okay. How is it possible that one person finds a food so delicious, comforting, and good, while a parent, sibling, partner, boyfriend, or girlfriend doesn't like it? Because again, they're tasting two different things. Maybe one of the tasters had a bad experience like food poisoning and won't go near a certain type of food anymore. That's an emotional and physical wound in the brain. It's not as simple as, people have different tastes, or we just have different palates. It's so much more than that. It's all brain related. It's, that person might have a lot of different levels of brain contamination. Or wait a minute, I might have a contamination. It's that person might have emotional wounds. Or hold on, I might have wounds from growing up. It's the sort of mental conditioning and brain betrayer interference that can lead to someone refusing to eat anything other than oatmeal. We hear about it right now in ARFID. ARFID is pretty rampant right now. There's quite a lot of people getting diagnosed with ARFID. And now we know why. Put a leafy green or celery juice in front of them, they won't eat or drink it. It has to be oatmeal until the hypoglossal and glossopharyngeal nerves start to receive fresh messages from the neurons that are cleaning up. Fascinating. How are we good on time? 28 minutes so far. Let me see. Don't want it to be too long. It might be a few sections. So let's read this last section of eating in disorder called wake-up calls. Sometimes a life event will wake you up out of an everyday eating disorder. For example, what happens when you go to the doctor's office and out of nowhere she says, "You're type 2 diabetic." Often, the experience will scare a person into eating new foods, ones they might never have tried before, eating out of a certain comfort zone, breaking out of a certain comfort zone. Instead of only having coffee all morning and then going for a double cheeseburger and soft drink at lunch and greasy takeout at dinner, being rocked by the threat of this diagnosis helps you make different choices. It's almost as if the shock of the doctor handing you bad news helped disrupt your eating disorder. Sometimes that won't do it. Sometimes people are told they have type 2 diabetes or are pre-diabetic, and they just can't change the way they eat, even if they have the resources. Asking instead for whatever medications to take to compensate. Which way it goes depends on how strong the eating disorder is, how deeply embedded it is in your central nervous system, in the way of life. It depends on what happens along the way, what abuses and hardships, and how saturated the brain is with toxins. Whichever everyday eating disorder you're dealing with, whether it's an aversion to foods you know would help you heal, an eating pattern that doesn't serve you, or a similar struggle, you can alter it if you detox your brain. When people start getting toxic heavy metals and other brain betrayers out of their system, they start liking different foods. And day by day, it starts to get better. I'm going to underline that, and I am going to stop right there. Now, we covered a lot, and we have so much more to cover. We're going to talk about food fear and orthorexia, and let's see. So we'll talk about food fear and orthorexia for sure on the next episode, and we might get into a little bit of anorexia, bulimia, and overeating, but we're not going to get through all of it. Let's see. And then on the next episode, we'll finish what we didn't finish on anorexia, bulimia, and overeating. And then we'll also read about what's behind a sugar addiction. And that will be the end of the chapter. Alrighty. So this was informative. I hope you got some things out of it. I hope you healed from some of it. And if you are interested in this series, go ahead and like and subscribe. And I will go ahead and cue my outro. Peace out for now, you guys. Bye.